I'd like to discuss the specific type of protein that you should be focusing on for your specific body problem. The question is, should it be fish? Should it be eggs? What about beef? What about chicken? Should you consume beef liver? Or what about plant protein or even protein powder? So today we're going to look at the nutrition profile in all of those different sources of protein. And I'm talking about amino acids, bioavailability of those amino acids. That means how well they're absorbed and utilized. Also, the B vitamins in those proteins, the omega 3 to omega 6 fatty acids in those proteins, the minerals in those proteins, the trace minerals in these proteins. And we're going to look at which type of protein is good for certain things more than other things. When I started to do this, I quickly found out that plant protein sources, those so-called clean plant-based proteins, they're not sufficient. In other words, they don't have the quantities of amino acids, and they don't have the type of amino acids that are bioavailable. They don't have the right ratios of these essential amino acids. So I didn't even include that in the list. I also didn't include protein powders. Why? Because in nature, protein always comes with certain nutrients like B vitamins and minerals and trace minerals. When you do protein powders, it doesn't have those things in it. And these vitamins and minerals are very essential to make that protein work. In other words, people might have this idea that, if you just have enough protein and eat more protein, that you'll build more muscles and ligaments and tendons and bone, etc. But that protein in our body cannot work unless you have vitamins and minerals and trace minerals. The vitamins and minerals and trace minerals are called cofactors or coenzymes. And so if we look at the biochemical pathways in our bodies that help to do all the functions in the body, they're all dependent on certain cofactors and coenzymes. And for example, if you're deficient in like B12, you can't make red blood cells. Or if you're lacking vitamin C, your adrenals can't work and you can't make collagen. And the other important point I want to emphasize is we don't just need protein for our muscles and ligaments and tendons. We need it for all of our biochemistry. There's a lot going on in every body tissue, from making hormones to making neurotransmitters to affect your mood, to building structural things like just things to keep the heart in rhythm, and other things that keep your nervous system intact, not to mention keep your immune system strong. And from this list, I focused on the higher quality protein sources like the grass fed versus the grain fed, and the wild caught versus the farm raised fish, and the pasture raised eggs versus the conventional, eggs that are from chickens in a barn. So let's start off with the first condition, which is basically aging. As we age, we definitely need more protein for repair to support maintenance, especially of our muscles. A lot of us, when we get older, we lose our hair, we lose the elasticity, we lose the ability to make antioxidants, we lose the ability to detoxify like we did when we were 18 years old. But the other important factor to know about as we age, we also lose our hydrochloric acid in our stomach. The strength or the pH of the stomach goes higher. That means less acidic as we get older. So, what does this have to do with protein? Well, you need this very strong concentrated stomach acid to break down different types of protein into what we really need is amino acids. So, the older you get, the less hydrochloric acid you have. That means you need to digest certain types of protein that are easy to digest, like eggs and fish. And this is probably also the reason why, as someone ages, they just dislike the taste of red meat sometimes because red meat is a bit more difficult to digest. But red meat has more proteins. Okay, it has more leucine, which is a key amino acid to help maintain muscle. But if you can't digest it, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, if we compare even beef to eggs, beef has more vitamin B3, B6, B12. But eggs have more B2, B9, which is biotin, and vitamin B5. Yet beef, if we compare that to eggs, has more iron, magnesium, potassium, and zinc. But eggs have a bit more calcium, phosphorus, and sodium. So you can see that each protein source has its own strength. But if we compare the two, eggs are easier to digest. But this is what I would recommend. If you're older and you have low stomach acids, I suggest you just add betaine hydrochloride to your diet before you eat. Maybe 3 betaine hydrochloride tablets before you eat. That way you can build up the acid and start breaking down a larger variety of protein sources. That way you can get the benefit of beef when you eat it, as well as eggs and fish. Because you're about to learn, each protein source has its uniqueness, it has its positives and its weaknesses. But as we age, we need more stomach acid. As a side note, the way you know you need more stomach acid is this: if you have indigestion, if you get gas, if you get acid reflux, especially GERD, that means you need more hydrochloric acid. I know that sounds strange, but if that confuses you, watch the video when we're done with this below. I'll put it in the description. So let's assume that you're adding this betaine hydrochloride if you're getting older to be able to digest red meat. Maybe you just do red meat once or twice a week. Now, I would recommend oysters once a week, okay? Or other similar shellfish because of the high level of zinc and selenium and especially iron that as we get older, we need more of. Selenium's good for the thyroid, zinc's good for the immune system and testosterone, and iron is good for the blood. But here's the thing, and this mainly pertains to men. If you are a man and you're watching this and you have a problem with iron, you might have either a genetic problem with iron where you hold on to iron, or you just don't do well with excess iron. You need to consume more chicken meat, white meat, not the red meat, but more the white meat, and turkey. Okay, not the dark meat, but the white meat. That way you can have less amount of iron. I don't know if you like liver, beef liver or not, but if you're getting older and you have liver once a week, boy, that would give you super high level amount of nutrition. I mean, even if we compare beef liver to regular beef, beef liver is super high in iron. It has much more iron than regular beef. It has super amounts of folate. It has about the same amount of amino acids as beef, but it has a lot of other things that are really good for your body. But if we compare beef liver to oysters, believe it or not, oysters have more iron than even beef liver. Oysters have more zinc than beef liver as well. And so oysters are at the top of the list with those nutrients, even more than red meat. But if you can consume beef liver once a week, if you like it, I personally don't like it. I wouldn't do it myself, but if you like it, like liver and onions, that would be a really good thing to do as you age. The other thing that's, I think, important to consume twice a week is fatty fish like salmon or sardines. That way, you can have higher levels of omega 3 fatty acids as part of the raw material to support your brain, as well as reduce inflammation and support your heart as well. The next condition I want to talk about is osteoporosis or osteopenia. That basically is a loss of bone. Osteopenia is like the phase before you get osteoporosis. And of course, one of the most important things for that would be vitamin D. A good amount of vitamin D, as well as the omega 3 to help your bones. Now let's shift to another condition called anemia. Okay. The two things you need for anemia are iron and B12. And of course, I already mentioned oysters have the highest amount of iron, but beef liver is also very high in iron and it's also very, very high in B12. In fact, it has the most B12 of anything. So the more anemic you are, the more you should have those two. Now, you can also do red meat, which is loaded with iron as well, and B12, but you can do a combination of those depending on what you prefer. But if we compare like iron to plant sources of iron, it's not bioavailable. The animal sources of iron are the best. Now, when we get into chicken, okay, chicken and turkey have more of the non-heme iron, so it's not as available as like red meat. And for some people, when they consume red meat, it's not that they don't have enough hydrochloric acid. They might have other problems with malabsorption in the digestive system. So if they want to get the benefit of this red meat, just consume hamburger. Now, let me just mention hamburger. Now, of course, you would want to consume grass fed. Now you might say, well, I don't really like the taste of grass-fed compared to, regular grain-fed because grain-fed has more fat in it. But if we look at the health of that animal, like a fatty animal versus an animal that's leaner, even if you have like deer meat, this is a difference between consuming like athletic meat versus kind of a meat that's borders on like metabolic syndrome or diabetes. The fattier that meat, the less health of that meat. And I do have a theory, and the theory goes like this. Um, you may get a little healthier if you consume healthier animals and healthier plants. But that's just the theory right now. Of course, we have to do the testing to really find out. So, if someone has lower digestive problems like irritable bowel syndrome, they probably will do better on hamburger and eggs. Those two are really high in nutrients, okay, but they're easier to digest. And with malabsorption problems that occur with, inflammation in your gut, you'll get a higher level of nutrition or more of a nutrient dense type compound that penetrates this malabsorption barrier. It wouldn't hurt to have that grass fed beef liver once a week as well to get your iron and your B vitamins. Now, what about macular degeneration? Okay, that's a problem with the back of the eye, with the retina, and there's two different phytochemicals that help macular degeneration lutein and zeaxanthin, which happens to be in egg yolks. So, eggs are good for that condition. Oysters or other shellfish are good as well because of the zinc. But to really fix it, you're going to have to fix insulin resistance and get off all your carbs as well as avoiding the omega 6 fatty acids, which is very high in chicken because they're grain fed. So anyone with macular degeneration should not be consuming chicken or even turkey. All right, what about inflammation in general? Well, that can include any condition with itis, like bursitis, tendonitis, arthritis, as well as autoimmune diseases. Anything with inflammation is going to do good with omega 3 fatty acids, okay? Omega 3 fatty acids are anti inflammatory. So that would be that fatty fish, like salmon. But I just want to mention one little note about fish, okay? If we compare farm raised fish to wild caught fish, you may see similar nutrients for almost everything and similar protein, but there's some big differences. One is even though farm raised fish is high in omega 3, it's also very high in omega 6 at the same time. And omega 3 and omega 6 compete for each other. So if you're consuming something with high amounts of omega 6, that's going to cancel out the effects of omega 3 because they both compete for the same enzymes. So if possible, start consuming the wild caught and not the farm raised. Now, what about hypertension, high blood pressure? Well, there's a lot of evidence that shows that omega 3 fatty acids and vitamin D are really good for that condition. And that brings us back to the fatty fish again, like salmon would be really good for hypertension. But also, as a side note, if you're deficient in potassium, you can get high blood pressure just from that. That condition is called hypokalemic hypertension. So you're going to need to add your potassium from large salads or large amount of vegetables. But also vitamin D can help lower blood pressure. All right, now what about depression? Well, depression can be improved with vitamin D for sure and omega 3 fatty acids because a certain omega 3 fatty acid called DHA makes up 20% of all the fats in your brain. So structurally, it's very important in your brain. It's been shown to improve cognitive function as well as mood. Now, if we shift to anxiety, for example, you need more B vitamins. So that would be the beef liver, right? Beef liver gives you a lot of B vitamins. You can also get it from nutritional yeast, but beef liver is a really good source of B vitamins. Now, what about muscle building in general? I'm going to say red meat. Red meat has a really high amount of amino acids. It has the B vitamins, it has zinc, it has iron, and the zinc will help you increase testosterone as well, which will then help you increase the muscles. And if you add the exercise on top of that, you'll have a complete package. And I'm just comparing this to like the whey protein powder, which has none of the cofactors or coenzymes to allow those proteins to work. So if you're deficient in vitamins and minerals and you take whey protein powder, it's not going to work to help anything connected to your muscles. What about gallstones? Well, that's usually a lack of a certain amino acid that's needed or required to make bile because a gallstone is really a deficiency of bile. So you need more taurine. And you can get taurine from scallops, mussels, and clams. What about if you have a problem in detoxification? You get exposed to, let's say, mold or a heavy metal or a chemical, or you're walking down the grocery store and you smell some of these chemicals, cleaning chemicals, and your body starts, malfunctioning. Or on a DNA test, you have genes that show poor detoxification. This usually means you need more nutrients, especially B vitamins, to help these enzymes detoxify better. I mean, the best thing would be grass fed beef liver as well as red meat. All right, what about if you have a fatty liver? Okay, what's good for that? Well, that can come from a choline deficiency. Choline is one of the B vitamins again, and one of the highest foods with choline is egg yolks. So I would recommend eggs for a fatty liver. All right, now what about diabetes? Is there anything that would be a little bit better than other things for diabetes? What's interesting about shellfish, okay, is shellfish actually has carbohydrates. It has more carbohydrates than any other types of protein sources. That would be like the stored glycogen in a shellfish. So you probably want to avoid shellfish because it has a bit of sugar and instead add the fatty fish like salmon, which has the omega 3 fatty acids, which can help stabilize this insulin problem and make insulin more sensitive. But also, grass fed beef is very high in something called CLA, has been known to make insulin more sensitive, helping your blood sugars. But you're not going to find a lot of CLA in like regular beef. Has to be grass fed, not grain fed. Some of you might be saying, well, I just can't afford grass fed or wild caught or pasture raised type foods. And I do understand that this video is not necessarily for trying to find the cheapest source of protein. I mean, I remember I was in college. I had no money. I had to stretch my pennies. And yes, I went to Burger King to get the two burgers for a buck many, many, many times. And yes, I went to the discount grocery stores to get the canned foods and the very unhealthy foods. And of course, I just said, I'll eat healthy when I graduated, which didn't happen for probably 10 years after that. But the point is that do the best you can right now with what you have and do intermittent fasting, which means you'll be spending less money on food so you can afford a little more money to invest in the quality of food that you eat. As you probably are realizing, certain protein sources have their strengths and weaknesses. So it's always good to have a combination of different protein sources. But what I wanted to do is kind of give you some ideas on if you were to have the best source to optimize the profile of nutrition in a certain protein source, what would that be for certain conditions? What should you focus on more than other things? And how can the quality of that protein be better for you? I mean, like even the farm raised fish compared to wild caught fish, kind of similar protein or amino acid profiles. But the farm raised fish has a lot more omega 6. It has more mercury, which has more PCPs, which is kind of considered a toxin. Anyway, I hope I enlightened you on these different protein sources. And since I did mention this low stomach acid problem, if you want more information on that, you should watch this video right here.